Welcome back to Cards and Comics, and today I'm going to explain why I think Logan Paul getting scammed for his $3.5 million Pokemon case is actually a good thing from the hobby. Now, what I'm saying is, I don't want anyone to get scammed, and I don't think it's good for Logan Paul. But what I'm talking about is the hobby and the rest of the people involved in the hobby, generally at a much lower, let's say, cost than what Logan Paul is paying for his product. But the fact that someone of his level and of someone doing transactions at this much money got scammed is something that needs to be addressed. And it's going to be a catalyst for change in the hobby, in my opinion. Now, let's go back into the archives here and what happened and kind of just see, what transpired and how can we fix this situation, because this issue of people getting scammed in the hobby is a consistent issue that has to be addressed if we ever want this hobby and what we collect to be serious in terms of the money people are spending. Because right now it feels like this is such an easy thing to do. This kind of scam is such an easy thing for people to pull off that the hobby itself won't be good or healthy until we address some of these issues and at least recognize how easy it is to pull this off. So, why is this good for the hobby? Well, again, let's look at how and why this happened. And the most common underlying issue that causes scams to happen in this hobby and most other hobbies is this: greed, right? And greed is what allows people to overlook issues they normally wouldn't overlook and to kind of look at things with hopium, hoping things are okay versus verifying and really understanding if they're okay by doing actual research and having a higher standard for proof, right? And if you think about it, Carl Sagan had this, saying where he said, extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence, right? If you're going to prove something like a ghost exists, you need to have strong scientific evidence. Otherwise, it didn't really occur, right? And I think the same thing goes in the hobby. If you're going to have something that theoretically doesn't exist ever pop up, like an open case of first edition Pokemon cards, then you have to have extraordinary proof that it's actually real, right? So, you know, one of the things that happened in this whole issue was, due to the greed and due to the nature of how the hobby works, is, overlooking red flags and again, hoping that issues weren't as bad as they, end up actually being is the first step. So there were issues, there were things that happened during this whole chain of events that were just completely ignored, right? You had the seller story changing about the origin and where this case started or where it came from. There was a previous auction in which the whole Pokemon community had a chance to look at the evidence and judge for themselves if this product was real. And without question, it was rejected by the community and the experts in the community as most likely not being real for the price it sold for. Um, and the thing that was really kind of crazy was no one that was involved in the transaction took any time to really do any comparison of legitimate examples of this product in the marketplace, because there was legitimate examples, and it appears that Gary, the person who actually has a case, this product, is a friend of Logan Paul, and they never talked about this transaction before it occurred. And again, this is going to be a theme of mine is, as a community, we should band together and we should be utilizing everyone's expert opinion who is an actual expert on some of these, very unique issues, right? Again, the seller shipped it internationally with like $1,000 insurance, and anyone who ships internationally knows, the product could have been opened, it could have been inspected, And so therefore, all the value could have been destroyed right then and there, even if it was real. That seemed like a very high risk on the seller's part, and the fact that the seller wouldn't allow anyone to see the product, or pick the product up in person is another huge red flag. Baseball card exchange, was paid $25,000 to grade something they knew nothing about. And so, regardless of how it looks today, in this Monday morning quarterbacking that we're all doing, financial incentives are one of the reasons, scams can take place in the hobby. Now, I'll start by saying this. I don't think that anyone involved in this issue was 100% a scammer, right? I think there was people who knew it may not be real, but hoped it was. And the end of the day is they all used baseball card exchange as sort of this final judge and jury of the authenticity of this product. And I feel bad for Steve Hart because I know he doesn't really know who I am, but I've done a lot of deals with him, bought product from him, and bought cards from him for many, many, many years. At shows, through his website, and I feel like he was a very good faith actor in this hobby. However, he got out of his lane tremendously in this case and really hurt the credibility of himself. And it's what's causing, I think, in the future some very needed change in how we look at authentication for these higher ticket items and in general for the hobby itself, right? The other thing too was, this product was sold immediately upon authentication. And if you go through the videos by Mealy Pops, who had a professional videographer with them, and then Kara Kahuna, and then they went on to kind of the Pokemon talk show circuit and talked about this. And, Logan Paul had his own videos, and Shine, the guy who was the broker in between Logan Paul or bought it, from Mealy Pops and Kara Kahuna, they all had their own videos, and go check them out. You can make your own determination on what you think was happening as far as who was more at fault. But you know one thing that was very apparent was once it was graded, they wanted to flip this thing as soon as possible. I mean, literally the same day, if possible. Like, it was a hot potato they wanted to get rid of. And in general, when you've got collectors of the level of a Mealy Pops or dealers that, Car Kahuna says he has $150 million, net worth, and Mealy Pops has his own shop and is a big time dealer. Those guys could put this kind of a product behind glass for 5 or 10 years and sell it when it goes $5 or $10 million. When Jacob, the Carcahuna guy, says, "Look, this is $10 million in 5 years." Why would you take something you truly believe is $10 million and sell it for 2.7 when you don't really need the money? And so there was a lot of red flags with that, right? Selling it immediately. I think they didn't know if this was truly real, even with the baseball card exchange wrap on it, right? Now, what Mealy Pops and Carcahuna did, though, is use the current method of legitimization of a collectible, right? So what we do today to say this is a real collectible that should be sold in the auctions and on eBay is, using the respected third-party authenticator and using the best one in the marketplace. In this case, they went to Steve Hart, Baseball Card Exchange, who is the only one really in this space doing this job. And he's been the head pack rater for PSA ever since pack rating started. And one of the things that did really shock me in this whole sequence of events is going to other channels and kind of listening to this story from other collectors of Pokemon's perspective is how little they knew about baseball card exchange and what they did. And in one video between Shine and Millie Pops and these guys, Shine says, maybe the newer collectors don't know about baseball card exchange, but this will educate them on buying authentic, real stuff because you don't have to worry about weighing the packs and doing all the crazy stuff you got to do to authenticate because those guys did it for you. And then we learned later on, well, they didn't really do any of that, and that's where we're kind of at. Um, the other thing that was really apparent about this whole thing, again, I kind of talked about it, was the card show or the Pokemon talk show circuit was all of the influencers in the hobby, like PokeJew and all these other kind of people in the space, all talked about it, you know, acted basically like this is real, and it took Rattle Pokemon, the guy who brought this to everyone's attention that it could be fake, it was like one voice in the wind, so to speak, crying out, trying to get attention. And he presented such a great case that people did pay attention. But it just shows you that, people in general just took it at face value because influencers, people who they felt were the people running the hobby in some extent, people, who have the most influence were saying it's okay. And that is another thing that's different that, if you can get two or three of these influencers to say it's real or to feature it on their channel, well, then you go a long way to convincing everyone this product's probably real. Now, why is this good for the hobby? And well, because this is going to force change. Like these kind of issues are what we've really been needing in the hobby because, in all honesty, there's been a lot of things happening that weren't great for the last 5 years. The biggest issue, from my perspective as a vintage sports card collector, was all of the trimming and trimmed and altered cards that PSA has graded, SGC has graded, and even BGS has graded that are proven fact. No one is better than the other. Anyone thinking SGC is better than PSA or BGS is better than SGC or whatever you want to go, whoever you want to use, they all have issues catching trimmed and fake and altered cards. If you go through the blowout forums threads, look at every one of those scans that are out there. It's across the board, not grader specific, right? And my issue's been that those kind of, fake, altered, trimmed cards, nothing's ever happened. There's been nobody convicted, charged with a crime. It's just that $10,000 card there, that $20,000 card there, that $50,000 card there, whatever it is, $200 card. It doesn't matter. Like, it just, no one cares that someone got ripped off. Maybe they'll get their money back through PSA or whatever, but it's never been, really dealt with in terms of just, making people actually pay for doing something wrong, right? And so that's the change we're really looking for, is holding people accountable and creating a process that's better than we have today, right? So first question is how do we determine, which items are authentic and why? Like, why do we need to determine authenticity and how do we do that, right? Well, I think in the future, items like this, especially items that are either so rare that they don't appear in auctions or for sale, very often, or things that have never been sold before, brand new things. And this happens in vintage cards, right? Every once in a blue moon, a new card is found that nobody has seen before. And the first question should always be, is this real? Did somebody make this in the back of their garage? Is this like, is this Ty Cobb card from a whatever, issue in the 1920s? Is this real? 1910s. Is this a real card? Or is this someone who just is trying to, make something look real that's really fake? And so the first thing you look at is provenance. Can you trace where this item came from? And does it make sense? That's what provenance is really supposed to tell us. We see it in comic books today, and that's the idea of these curated, these collections that have been documented, and it's put on, You'll see it on the label, what collection it came from sometimes, and they sell for a little bit higher value because you know where that comic book came from. It came from this one collector who collected, whatever he collected or that person collected, and it has a very strong provenance that when you go to resell it, there's a history with the item, right? Now, I don't think every card and comic needs to have that, right? But the ones that cost millions of dollars certainly need to have some way to prove it came from a legitimate source and that it's not made up by some guy in their basement trying to make, a lot of money, right? Um, the real analysis, right? So what really was sad about the video with Steve Hart was, how much he was banking on the tape of the product, how it was embedded in the box to, prove the item was actually real because he was grading or authenticating the case, not what's inside, right? So and what's important, what is inside that case, not the case itself. I don't think it's unlikely, and it's feasible that as a manufacturer you might change the tape, the location of your markings. I've been in manufacturing for my whole life, and yes, we will change something like that when we're making cases and cases of product because a coder broke, so you put a new coder online. You ran out of tape, so you use a clear tape. It doesn't matter because the case itself isn't what you're selling. You're selling what's in the case. But, if you're going to sell an open product and that's what's worth a lot of money, you have to have some way, such as photo matching, key marking identifiers. And, the thing that I thought was really sad was, Steve Hart admitted he didn't know a lot about this kind of product. And instead of going out and asking for help from other experts, they went alone, like kind of this going it alone mentality, right? And I know PSA and SGC will do this sometimes as well. And I know also sometimes they do reach out for some expert opinion on issues that there is a recognized expert. So I would love it if they were more transparent about that and say, look, if an item comes in from this set or from this era, we use these people because they're experts in these eras and they have the most experience, and we have some way of verifying the product other than just a newbie grader who's never seen, a very rare vintage issue and just kind of given his opinion and hoping it's okay. We don't know what that process really looks like when those items come in. We think we know that it should take longer, but we really don't know what that process is. But on these unopened products, there has to be more than just looking at the tape and looking to see if the box has been opened. Because if everything is faked, then just doing that isn't enough. And this goes into the other thought is that maybe some items just can't be authenticated. Maybe there's not enough known about an item or a case of items that you can authenticate the item without doing more research or just saying we don't have enough information this time to do it. They do this a lot in PSA and other grading companies when a new issue is brought to them that they can't verify the issue is actually real. This happens a lot with newer cards. Like they don't know about a set and maybe they won't grade it because they're like, I don't know where this set came from. This card came from Argentina. We don't have any idea, like if, when it was manufactured, how long it was manufactured. So we're just not going to grade it until we know more about it, right? Now, the other side of that coin on sometimes things cannot be authenticated is we should seriously ask ourselves the question is, can unopened wax boxes and cases actually be authenticated without opening the case and the box to see if the packs inside, the cases inside are truly unopened products that contain what's in that case? And I think this is a really interesting question because, what are we buying? Are we buying the box? Are we buying what's in the packs? Okay. What matters is that the packs are real. The cases or the boxes that are in that case are real. That's much more relevant than if the case has never been opened. Now, you could, vilify me and say, look, everything being unmolested and pristine, never been open you know, is the perfect scenario for what the collectors want. But can you authenticate it without going to deeper levels of understanding that everything that you're authenticating, from the packs to the boxes in the box to the box on the outside of the box, are real? I don't know. I think we have to ask ourselves that question: is, are we willing to take $3, $4, $5 million risk that they could have just repacked a real box? Because this scam was so unsophisticated. What if they actually had an unopened box from Wizards of the Coast from that era that somebody got as printer scrap, or was thrown away in the garbage, or had a previous first edition boxes in them, and they found a way to reseal that, right? I mean, that would have been even more sophisticated, but this was completely fabricated from the beginning. But it just shows you, like, this wasn't even the highest level of fakes. This was like, I call it the B team, of fakes. Like, this wasn't even like the A team, or even the master level. The guys in the art world that can fake a Picasso. Okay, there's people out there who can do this at a much higher level, and this was not one of those kind of attempts. So the other thing that this is going to really force is accountability, right? The first thing that everyone screamed about after this issue happened was that Baseball Card Exchange is going to stand behind this. Like, they authenticated this. Well, if you really read what PSA, SGC, and these guys really say, even though PSA has this guarantee, is good luck getting your money back sometimes, because they've gone on record and said this. So this is their words, that PSA grade is just our opinion on the condition of the card. That grading isn't scientific, it's people looking at cards, and there is no technology being used to really verify that everything's 100% real. It's just an opinion. And on the flip side, if you use photo matching, such as what was done in this Pokemon case situation, that using photos to verify something looks real or not, that isn't proof. Not only PSA said it, but Pre-War Card Collector said it as well, that PWCC and PSA don't agree that photo matching isn't a real way of showing proof that something has been altered or is not real, even though every time that this has been done, pretty much the you know, outcome has been the card has been altered, or the case or box is fake. And so the predominance of evidence would say that photo matching is proof, and is a great way of telling if something's been altered or not real. But these companies don't want to stand behind that, because that's actually a better way of doing it. But the reason why they don't, and this is something we have to really understand too as a hobby, to get better at this, is that the reason they don't do this kind of thing, why don't they bring in the experts? Why don't they photo match? Why don't they, do more than just look at something for 20 seconds? Because that's about how long they take to grade a card, a modern card. From what PSA said, they look at about 20 to 40 seconds. And that, why aren't they doing more, right? Because that would cost more, right? It's a resource issue, it's a money issue, and I think that's what we're at right now, is that as a hobby, is we want our cards graded in one day. We want it to cost very little, and we know that pricing now has got out of control because demand's so high. But in general, PSA and grading companies, and the hobby all wants cheap grading very fast. And if you put these kind of rules in place, you're not going to be able to do that. And so for me right now, I would say, for certain things that meet certain criteria, like never been seen before, very expensive, easy to fake, 1948 leaf freaking cards, should all go through this process. There should be more process that's associated with this, that's very transparent and very communicated to the dealers, the collectors, and say, look, yeah, we're going to charge you more money for a 52 manual because we're going to tell you it takes more money to authenticate it. But we may also have to charge more money for your 48 leaf common because they're so oftenly trimmed that we need to take more time with that issue. Or a first edition Pokemon pack, even though it's pretty common, maybe not, I think it seems common, I see them a lot, but we're still going to take a lot of time because they are getting faked quite often now. And again, that leads me into the last point here is what I really hope that this really drives forward, besides, changing the process, to more transparent and better process, to hold the actual graders accountable and make them own their process and make it really work. Some level of regulation and prosecution of fraud. As soon as you start prosecuting people for counterfeiting the $1 million items, then you start prosecuting them for the $100 items, you're going to see less people wanting to take the risk and do this if they know they can get caught. And I would submit that it's much easier to catch these bozos and what they're doing than what's going on in other parts of collectible communities like artwork, right? Who have master level, forgers versus kind of the bottom basement B team guys we're seeing in the card industry, right? So, again, I talk about shill bidding, card altering, counterfeiting. You've got to eventually get to a point to where those people get arrested and you blackball anyone involved with that issue. Today, the problem we have in the hobby is most of the time, the people who got caught doing these kind of things are still involved in the hobby. My favorite example is, you know, when it was a game, um, which counterfeited slabs of PSA graded cards, still sells sports cards on eBay under San Diego Collectibles, right? The guy is still a dealer, even though he defrauded hundreds, if not thousands, of hobbyists. The guy is still a dealer, right? So, auction houses, fractional share companies, anyone who is buying and selling cards and has the ability to, without oversight, create a unfair marketplace. And if a business practice like shill bidding or allowing your own employees to buy and sell product, like if a PSA allows their own employees to buy and sell PSA cards, that's a big conflict of interest. Having an auction house like, Golden under its wing, very big conflict of interest, right? So there should be some sort of rules in place to eliminate these conflicts of interest, to eliminate these companies from basically printing money, Fanatics having its own grading company, that would be a conflict of interest to a pretty high level. So again, we got to have change. And this Logan Paul issue is such a big deal because it's the first time that I can remember someone who has a platform, a modern social media existence and platform that can raise awareness to this issue to the level we've never seen before. Because let's be honest, the people who got scammed before, even though they could have been doctors and lawyers, people who have some connections, they don't have the followers of a Logan Paul on Instagram. They don't have the eyeballs that he gets when he says something. And if he chooses to make this an issue, chooses to hold accountable the forces, the powers that be that allow these things to happen, change will have to come. And again, not too many people can absorb $3.5 million hits. And this could be a big opportunity for change. And again, if other people get involved, if the government gets involved, if other agencies get involved, if other businesses get involved, this can happen. Collectors, we need to hold each other not only accountable, but other people accountable. So these kind of things can actually change because I do believe at the end of the day, there is the ability to take back the hobby from the companies and the people who just want to milk it for money just, come into it, bleed it dry, and then go on to something else. Like we could create something that's lasting and great and take it and make it better, but we can only do it with change. And this is a good opportunity. This is a line in the sand. This event is something that we could use as a catalyst for change, or it could be the first of many, many frauds and scams that are highlighted at this level of millions of dollars and make the whole hobby appear to be a clown show, which underneath the surface it sort of is. So that's my take. That's why I think, this could be good for the hobby. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time, and have a great day. Bye.